The invitation. The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, shaking humanity's sense of normalcy. In the 50 years since humans had ventured into the stars, they had never encountered anything like this. At Earth Defense Command Headquarters, the massive screens lit up with strange symbols that rapidly transformed into English text, an invitation to join the Galactic Council. For decades, humanity had reached out to the stars, yearning for contact. And now, it seemed, the stars were reaching back. Ambassador Ethan Reynolds stood by the window in his office, gazing out over the gleaming towers of New Terra Nova. He was a man shaped by his mission, a diplomat who had dedicated his life to preparing Earth for the moment they would join the galactic stage. At 64, his face bore the lines of countless negotiations, each a small step toward this day. He turned from the window to face General Ava Carter, who sat stiffly in the chair opposite his desk. "They're really inviting us?" he asked, his voice heavy with suspicion. "Yes, sir," Carter replied, her tone edged with disbelief. After decades of silence, they'd finally decided we're worthy of their attention. Or maybe they're just worried. Your mission briefing suggests our recent colonization efforts in unclaimed systems might have ruffled their feathers. Ethan picked up the briefing tablet on his desk. The Galactic Council station was situated in the neutral expanse of space, a distant star system far from both human and Council territories. It was a fitting location for what was meant to be a historic meeting, yet the timing of the invitation seemed too convenient. That evening, Ethan sat in his garden with his wife, Mira, and their son, Alex. The synthetic weather system above the city cast a perfect twilight, with stars beginning to emerge against the fading sky. Mira poured tea as they discussed the implications of the Council's invitation. "I don't trust it," Alex said, his voice carrying the defiance of youth. At 27, he had followed his father's path into diplomacy, but retained a brashness that Ethan had worked hard to temper. "We've been reaching out for years. Why respond now?" "Perhaps because we've shown we're no longer a minor species," Ethan replied, watching a satellite streak across the heavens. "Or maybe because we've become too significant to ignore." Mira placed a hand over his. "Just be careful. We know so little about them. They've been watching us for half a century without saying a word. That's not the behavior of allies." Ethan nodded, unable to shake the unease that had settled over him since the invitation arrived. Despite the optimism being broadcast to the public, he knew better than to expect a warm welcome. The next 2 days were consumed by preparations. Ethan absorbed every piece of intelligence Earth had gathered about the Council, memorized snippets of 6 alien languages, and refined his approach to negotiating humanity's place among the stars. Every detail mattered. The stakes were higher than any mission he had undertaken before. When the day of departure arrived, Ethan stood at the airlock of the Stellar Envoy, Earth's most advanced diplomatic vessel. The sleek craft embodied humanity's aspirations, a combination of beauty and hidden strength. Behind him, Mira and Alex stood among a small farewell gathering of dignitaries and military leaders. Their faces were calm, but their eyes betrayed the gravity of the moment. "Safe travels, Ethan," General Carter said, offering a brisk salute. Ethan nodded and stepped aboard. As the airlock sealed behind him, he took one last look at Earth through the viewport. Its blue and green surface glimmered against the black void, a reminder of everything he was fighting to protect. The journey to the Council station took 6 days. Ethan spent the time refining his strategy and considering every possible angle. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a carefully constructed trap. The station itself came into view on the final day, a sprawling construct of silver and gold, orbiting a distant star like an enormous flower blooming in the darkness. Its beauty was undeniable, yet something about it felt wrong. When the Stellar Envoy docked, Ethan stepped into the station's arrival bay. 2 tall, slender beings greeted him, their translucent skin glowing faintly in the dim light. They spoke through translators, their words devoid of emotion, Ambassador Reynolds, welcome. We are Guide First and Guide Second. Please follow us. The halls of the station were unnervingly empty. Ethan expected to see other diplomats, bustling activity, and ceremonial greetings. Instead, the corridors were sterile, devoid of life beyond maintenance drones and automated systems. The air itself carried a faint metallic tang. When they reached his quarters, Guide First stopped abruptly. Remain here until summoned. The first session of the council begins in 6 hours. Ethan's training told him this was no ordinary diplomatic meeting. The absence of ceremony and the strange emptiness of the station felt deliberate. Once alone, he activated his secure communicator. Captain Vega, are you receiving me? Yes, sir, the captain of the Stellar Envoy replied. But our sensors are showing strange interference. Half our systems are down since docking. Keep the engines ready, Ethan said. Something feels off. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. A small green-skinned alien with wide eyes stood nervously in the hallway. It whispered, its translator barely audible. Ambassador, I am Representative Fourth of the Rim Worlds. May I enter? Ethan let the alien in, noting how it checked the hallway before stepping inside. Its voice was urgent. I came to warn you. The elder races are not pleased with humanity's expansion. Your new colonies in the spiral arm. They had plans for those systems. Ethan frowned. Those systems were unoccupied. We searched thoroughly. They were empty because they were being preserved. Your people have taken 12 key systems in 3 years. The elders see this as a threat. This invitation is not about membership. It is a trap. The alien's fear was palpable, but so was its sincerity. Why are you telling me this? Ethan asked. The alien hesitated before replying. Because my people were once like yours. We expanded too quickly. They crushed us for it. I cannot stop what is coming, but I can warn you. After the alien left, Ethan spent hours composing a message to Earth. If the Council intended to make an example of humanity, then they had chosen the wrong species. Whatever came next, Ethan resolved to face it head-on. The Council Chamber. Ethan Reynolds stood in the shadow of the massive golden doors that led to the Council Chamber. His heart raced, but his face remained calm, the practiced neutrality of a seasoned diplomat. Flanking him were the guides, tall, emotionless beings who had offered no further explanation about the upcoming session. The metallic tang of the air clung to his senses, making it hard to focus on anything but the growing unease in his chest. The doors creaked open with a slow, deliberate motion, revealing a vast, circular chamber. It was a structure of almost overwhelming scale, with tiered seats rising high into the domed ceiling. In those seats sat the representatives of the 37 spacefaring species that made up the Galactic Council. Their forms varied wildly, some glowing with bioluminescence, others encased in mechanical exoskeletons. Their eyes, dozens of them glowing faintly in the dim light, all turned to him. Ethan stepped forward, the weight of the chamber pressing down on him. In the center of the room stood a single platform, small and stark, surrounded by nothing but empty space. He walked toward it, acutely aware of the sound of his footsteps echoing through the chamber. As he took his place on the platform, the golden doors slammed shut behind him, sealing him inside. The High Speaker, a towering serpent-like creature with shimmering scales, rose from its seat at the head of the chamber. Its elongated neck swayed as it spoke, its voice amplified to a resonant boom. Ambassador Ethan Reynolds of Earth, it began, each word laced with cold authority. You stand before the Galactic Council seeking membership for your species. Is this correct? Yes, High Speaker, Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the weight of hundreds of alien gazes boring into him. Earth and its colonies seek to join the Council as equals. The High Speaker's gaze lingered on him, unblinking. Before we proceed, do you have anything to present to the Council as part of your petition? Ethan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small data crystal. He held it aloft, allowing the chamber's projection systems to activate. A beam of light caught the crystal, and holographic images filled the air around him. Records of council activity that Earth intelligence had painstakingly compiled over the years. These are records of council actions that violate its own founding principles, Ethan said, his voice rising to carry over the murmurs that rippled through the chamber. Deliberate suppression of developing civilizations, hoarding of resources, the forced displacement of entire populations. I present this evidence to show that the Council has not acted as a protector of the galaxy, but as an oppressor. The reaction was immediate. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of noise. Some representatives shouted in anger, their translators struggling to keep up with the torrent of alien languages. Others whispered among themselves, their expressions ranging from surprise to veiled satisfaction. Ethan held his ground, knowing that this was the moment he needed to stand firm. One of the elder representatives rose from its seat, its shimmering robes flashing with angry red light. This is an outrage. How dare a primitive species accuse the Council of such falsehoods? You overstep, human. Ethan met the alien's glare with calm defiance. These are not falsehoods. They are facts. Humanity has faced countless challenges and survived every one. We will not bow to corruption, nor will we allow ourselves to be subjugated. The High Speaker's voice cut through the chaos. Silence. The chamber quieted, though the tension hung thick in the air. The High Speaker's unblinking gaze fixed on Ethan. These accusations are grave. Do you understand the consequences of making such claims without merit? I do, Ethan replied, holding his head high. But I also understand the consequences of remaining silent in the face of injustice. The High Speaker's scales rippled with what Ethan could only interpret as a gesture of displeasure. You dare challenge the Council's authority. Very well. Guards, seal the chamber. Ethan's heart sank as heavy shutters descended over the chamber's exits, locking him inside. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, as a low hum filled the room. Around him, the council members watched in stony silence. The High Speaker loomed closer, its serpentine body curling around the edges of the chamber. Humanity's defiance will not be tolerated. Let this serve as a lesson to all who would dare question the order we have maintained for 10,000 years. Ethan instinctively reached for the emergency beacon in his pocket. He pressed it, but nothing happened. His communicator crackled faintly, Captain Vega's voice barely audible through the interference. Ambassador, we're detecting hazardous chemicals being released in the chamber. We're trying to override the station's systems. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. Broadcast everything, he whispered into the communicator. Let Earth see it all. The air took on a strange, sharp smell. Ethan felt his skin begin to tingle, then burn. His uniform started to smolder. The pain was searing, but he refused to let it show. Instead, he lifted his gaze to the council members watching from their elevated seats. This is what you fear, isn't it? He said, his voice hoarse but defiant. You fear humanity's strength, our resolve, our refusal to break. The pain became unbearable, his vision blurring as flames licked at his body. Yet he stood tall, his final words carrying through the communicator to the stellar envoy and back to Earth. Remember this, remember why we fought. And when the time comes, remind them why humanity survives. As the flames consumed him, the chamber fell silent. The council members remained unmoved, their expressions cold and impassive. Far above, hidden in the observation rings, a small alien figure watched the scene unfold. Representative Forth's hands trembled as it realized the implications of what had just happened. Humanity would not submit, and the galaxy would soon understand the cost of underestimating them. Humanity's rage. The transmission of Ambassador Ethan Reynolds' final moments spread like wildfire through Earth and its colonies. The footage of his unyielding defiance as he burned alive in the Galactic Council chamber ignited a fury unlike anything humanity had ever known. Every screen, every broadcast, and every channel displayed his last words. Remember this. Remember why we fought. And when the time comes, remind them why humanity survives. In the Earth Defense Command war room, Admiral Robert Keller stood motionless, watching the footage replay on the massive central screen. His weathered face betrayed no emotion, but his clenched fists spoke volumes. Around him, officers scrambled to analyze the fallout, the room a cacophony of voices and alarms. Humanity's heart broke for Reynolds, but its resolve hardened like steel. The president's voice cut through the chaos as she entered the room, flanked by military and political leaders. "We've confirmed the Council's message," she said, her tone sharp. "They've declared this an execution of a disruptive element. They've demanded our immediate withdrawal from all outer colonies." Admiral Keller turned to face her, his voice a low growl. "And our response?" The president's expression was grim, unanimous. "Every nation, every colony. We reject their demands, and we are at war." A heavy silence fell over the room. The decision, though expected, carried the weight of a species about to step into the unknown. Keller nodded and turned to his staff. "Initiate Operation Phoenix. Prepare all fleets for immediate mobilization." The room sprang into action, the atmosphere electric with purpose. On screens across the command center, the sprawling battle plans of Operation Phoenix came to life. Keller had spent years preparing for the possibility of war, despite public claims of peace. The Council's arrogance had been its greatest weakness, leaving them blind to humanity's ingenuity and foresight. The Council relied on advanced energy shields, AI-driven targeting systems, and faster-than-light ships, technologies they deemed invincible. But Keller and his team had identified their Achilles heel. Earth's forces would rely on weapons the Council had long dismissed as primitive. Nuclear missiles, kinetic bombardments, and projectile-based weaponry, simple but devastatingly effective against the Council's over-reliance on energy-based defenses. Across human space, the gears of war began turning. Hidden shipyards in asteroid belts and on remote moons powered up, revealing fleets of warships disguised as civilian transports. Colonies activated their defense grids, converting mining vessels into makeshift battleships. Sleeper agents embedded within Council space awoke, their covert missions now critical to the coming conflict. In her office at the Diplomatic Court, Alex Reynolds, Ethan's son, stared at the footage of his father's execution. The image of his father standing tall, even as the flames consumed him, burned into his memory. Alex's hand trembled as he closed the file. "They thought killing him would scare us," he muttered. "They have no idea what they've unleashed." He turned to his team, composed of Earth's best diplomats and strategists. "We need to ensure our allies in the shadows step forward. The Council's corruption has touched more than just us. Let's make sure they know humanity isn't fighting alone." Messages were dispatched across the stars, reaching out to species that had suffered under the Council's oppressive rule. Many had endured centuries of resource exploitation, forced relocation, and systemic silencing. Now, with the Council's actions against humanity exposed, those species began to see an opportunity for change. Quiet support turned into open communication, and an alliance began to form, one rooted in shared defiance against a common enemy. On Earth, factories switched to wartime production at a breakneck pace. Weapons, ships, and supplies flowed like water. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to refine old technologies for the new battlefield. The brightest minds in human space gathered, pooling knowledge to maximize their advantage. From every colony, volunteers flooded recruitment centers, ready to defend their homeworlds and avenge their ambassador. Admiral Keller stood before his assembled fleet, his voice steady as he addressed his commanders. "The Council has underestimated us. They see us as primitive, disorganized, and weak. Let them cling to those delusions. We will show them the strength of a united humanity. They've never fought a war like the one we're about to bring them." The first phase of Operation Phoenix targeted the Council's supply lines. Human agents embedded in Council systems provided precise intelligence on weak points, patrol schedules, and vulnerabilities. Civilian mining ships, long dismissed as harmless, dropped their disguises to reveal hidden missile bays and railguns. Asteroids were rigged with thrusters and aimed at Council facilities, turning simple rocks into devastating weapons. The Council's largest supply depot above a gas giant was the first to fall. A wave of kinetic strikes overwhelmed its shields, followed by a barrage of nuclear missiles that obliterated the station. Council AI systems, designed to counter advanced technologies, struggled to adapt to the primitive ballistic trajectories of human weapons. Within hours, one of the Council's most critical assets was reduced to rubble. Across Council space, similar strikes played out with devastating efficiency. Communication networks were disrupted, trade routes severed, and key installations destroyed. The Council, unaccustomed to direct conflict, scrambled to respond. Their fleets, designed for intimidation rather than war, struggled to counter the relentless ingenuity of humanity's tactics. On the bridge of the Stellar Envoy, Captain Vega monitored the first wave of attacks. The ship, having narrowly escaped the Council station, now served as a command hub for the initial operations. Vega's crew worked tirelessly, their resolve unshaken despite the losses they had witnessed. "Status report," Vega called out. "All primary targets neutralized," her tactical officer replied. "Council forces are scrambling, but their responses are disorganized." Vega nodded, her voice firm. "Keep the pressure on. This isn't just about victory. It's about showing them that humanity won't be broken." In the shadow of the gas giant, a Council fleet arrived, its sleek ships bristling with advanced weaponry. But they were too late. The debris of their destroyed depot floated in the void, a testament to humanity's ability to strike where it hurt most. As the Council ships moved to engage, Vega issued a final order to her fleet. "Retreat and regroup. Let them chase shadows. We've already won this round." As the human ships disappeared into the vastness of space, the Council fleet was left to pick through the wreckage. What they found was a chilling message, etched into a piece of surviving debris. "Remember Ethan Reynolds. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget." The war had begun, and humanity's wrath would not be denied. Striking back. The aftermath of humanity's initial strikes sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. Reports of destroyed depots, severed supply lines, and failed countermeasures flooded the Council chambers. For the first time in millennia, the Council faced an enemy that fought with tactics they could not predict, an enemy that refused to adhere to the rules of their carefully curated galaxy. In a private chamber aboard the Council station, the High Speaker and representatives of the elder races convened in a state of controlled panic. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the remnants of their once pristine supply network, a crisscross of shattered lines and burning installations. "They are savages," hissed one representative, a crystalline being whose voice rang like breaking glass. "No species has ever dared such recklessness." "They are not reckless," countered another, a spindly insectoid with iridescent wings. "They are calculating. Every strike has been precise, designed to cripple us where we are most vulnerable." The High Speaker's scaled body coiled tighter as it listened. Its voice cut through the debate like a blade. "This is not a war. It is a test. Humanity seeks to prove they are our equals. They believe their barbaric tactics will give them the advantage. We will show them they are mistaken." But deep down, even the High Speaker could feel the tremor of uncertainty. The Council had thrived on control, subjugation, and manipulation. War, true, unrestrained war, was a relic of the distant past, something the Council's vast technology had rendered unnecessary. Now, faced with an opponent that fought with desperation and ingenuity, they found themselves unprepared. On the edge of Council space, humanity's fleet regrouped in a hidden asteroid belt. Admiral Keller stood aboard the Iron Resolve, the flagship of Earth's hastily assembled war fleet. Around him, commanders from Earth and its colonies gathered to discuss the next phase of Operation Phoenix. "Our initial strikes have achieved their objectives," Keller began, his tone calm but commanding. "We've disrupted their supply chains and forced them onto the defensive. But this war will not be won with hit-and-run tactics alone." He gestured to a holographic map of Council-controlled systems, The Council's strength lies in its centralized power. Their fleets are scattered, and their command infrastructure is fragile. Our next objective is to destabilize their leadership and sow chaos among their member species. One of the commanders, a stern-faced woman from the Mars Defense Corps, leaned forward. "What about their fleets? They'll regroup and come after us." "They will," Keller acknowledged. "But we've prepared for that. Our sleeper agents have provided detailed intelligence on their ship movements. We'll lure them into ambushes, disrupt their coordination, and pick them apart." As the meeting continued, a transmission came through from Alex Reynolds, now coordinating the diplomatic front of the war. His face appeared on the screen, his features hardened by the weight of responsibility. "Our efforts to gather allies are progressing," Alex reported. "Several species have expressed interest in joining us, but they're afraid of retaliation. They've seen what the Council is capable of." "They need to see what we are capable of," Keller replied. "Show them the footage of Ethan. Show them our victories. Make them understand that this is their chance to stand against the Council's tyranny." Alex nodded, his voice firm. "I'll make sure they know. We're not just fighting for humanity. We're fighting for everyone the Council has oppressed." The next phase of the war began with a coordinated assault on one of the Council's most secure installations, the Arcanus Relay, a massive communications hub that linked the Council's farthest territories. Without it, their ability to coordinate across vast distances would be crippled. Humanity's fleet approached under the cover of an asteroid field, their ships hidden by jamming signals and false energy signatures. The Stellar Envoy, now outfitted with advanced stealth systems, led the charge. Captain Vega sat in the command chair, her crew tense but ready. "Targets in range," her tactical officer reported. "Council defenses are minimal. They don't expect an attack here." "Good," Vega said. "Let's keep it that way. Prepare the kinetic rounds." Instead of advanced energy weapons, humanity's fleet carried railguns loaded with massive projectiles. Chunks of tungsten designed to smash through even the strongest shields. As the first rounds fired, the impact was devastating. The Arcanus Relay's defenses crumbled under the onslaught, its energy shields unable to withstand the raw force of the kinetic strikes. Within minutes, the relay was in ruins. Humanity's fleet retreated before reinforcements could arrive, leaving behind a scene of chaos. The Council's ability to communicate and coordinate across their territories was now severely compromised. In the days that followed, reports of unrest began to emerge from Council-controlled worlds. Species long suppressed by the Council's authority saw an opportunity to resist. Protests turned into riots and riots into revolts. The Council's control began to fracture. On Earth, Alex received a message from one such species, a small but technologically advanced race known as the Vexari. Their representative, a cautious but determined figure, spoke with guarded hope. "We have seen what you've done," the Vexari said. "Your defiance has inspired many. But if we join you, we will need assurances. The Council will punish us if you fail." "You won't be alone," Alex replied. "Humanity is committed to this fight. And when we win, we'll make sure the galaxy is a place where no one lives in fear of the Council again." As the Vexarian voice signed off, Alex felt a surge of determination. The galaxy was beginning to change, and humanity was at the heart of it. Back aboard the Iron Resolve, Keller stood before his crew, his voice carrying through the ship's intercom. "This war isn't just about survival. It's about justice. It's about standing up to those who think they can control us, manipulate us, and destroy us. They've underestimated humanity, and they're paying the price." Across human space, fleets mobilized, factories churned out weapons, and people rallied around the memory of Ethan Reynolds. The Council had sparked a war, but they had also united humanity like never before. And now, humanity was determined to win, not just for themselves, but for every species that had ever suffered under the Council's rule. The turning point. The Galactic Council's grip on power was slipping. Humanity's relentless assaults on their supply lines and infrastructure had left them scrambling. For centuries, they had ruled through fear and domination, relying on their technological superiority and the compliance of their member species. But now, a new force had emerged, one that refused to be subdued, one that thrived under pressure. Admiral Robert Keller stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching as his fleet prepared for their next strike. The holographic display in front of him showed a detailed map of the Kasari system, a key hub of Council operations. Capturing it would be humanity's most ambitious move yet, a direct attack on the Council's ability to mount any significant counteroffensive. "Admiral, all ships are in position," reported Commander Lin, his second in command. Keller nodded. "Good. Initiate the operation. Let's make this one count." The plan was bold, almost audacious. Humanity's fleet would use a combination of stealth tactics, diversionary strikes, and overwhelming force to take control of the system. At its heart was the Kasari Spire, a massive orbital fortress that served as the system's command center. It was heavily fortified, but Keller knew the Council relied too much on their technology and not enough on strategy. On the ground, a different kind of battle was brewing. Alex Reynolds had joined a covert team on one of the system's smaller moons. Their mission was to disable the Spire's defensive grid, a vital step in the larger plan. The moon's surface was barren, its thin atmosphere requiring them to move in full environmental suits. As they approached the target installation, Alex's team moved silently, their movements practiced and efficient. He couldn't help but think of his father as he crept through the shadows. Ethan Reynolds had died to expose the Council's crimes and ignite humanity's resolve. Now Alex was determined to honor his legacy. "We're in position," whispered one of his team members, a sharp-eyed woman named Nadia. Alex nodded. "Plant the charges. We need to be out of here before they realize what's happening." Minutes later, a series of explosions lit up the horizon, sending plumes of dust and debris into the thin air. The installation's power grid faltered, and the Spire's defensive shields flickered before collapsing entirely. "Mission complete," Alex said into his communicator. "Admiral, the shields are down. It's all yours." Above the moon, the Iron Resolve and its fleet moved into action. Keller's voice rang through the comm channels. "All ships, engage targets. Focus on the Spire. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate humanity." The battle that followed was nothing short of epic. Council warships, sleek and bristling with advanced weaponry, clashed with humanity's rugged, heavily armed vessels. The Council's AI-driven targeting systems struggled to adapt to the unpredictability of human tactics. Instead of energy weapons and advanced projectiles, humanity unleashed a relentless barrage of kinetic rounds, nuclear missiles, and electromagnetic disruptors. On board the Spire, chaos reigned. Council commanders, unaccustomed to direct combat, panicked as their systems failed and human forces pressed the attack. Keller's fleet concentrated fire on the fortress, its armor crumbling under the relentless assault. "Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal from the Spire," Lin reported. "They're requesting a ceasefire to negotiate terms." Keller's jaw tightened. "Do they think this is a game?" No response. "Continue the attack." Moments later, the Spire's core reactor detonated in a blinding flash of light. The massive structure collapsed in on itself, its destruction marking a turning point in the war. The Council's greatest stronghold in the region was gone, and with it, their ability to control the Kasari system. Cheers erupted across the human fleet as the realization set in. Humanity had not only survived the Council's onslaught, but had begun to turn the tide of the war. For the first time, the galaxy saw that the Council was not invincible. Back on Earth, the victory was celebrated as a moment of unity and strength. Broadcasts of the Kasari Spire's destruction played alongside tributes to Ethan Reynolds and the countless others who had sacrificed for this fight. Factories ramped up production, scientists pushed the boundaries of innovation, and volunteers continued to pour into recruitment centers. Humanity was not just fighting back, they were thriving under the pressure. In the days following the battle, messages began pouring in from alien species across the galaxy. Some offered quiet support, while others openly declared their intention to join humanity's fight. The Vexari, inspired by the destruction of the Spire, pledged their fleets to the cause, their advanced cloaking technology proving invaluable in the war's next stages. On the Council station, panic turned to desperation. The High Speaker convened an emergency session, its serpentine body coiled tightly in frustration. "This is unacceptable. We cannot allow these primitives to continue. They are destabilizing the entire galaxy." "We underestimated them," admitted one representative, its insectoid wings twitching nervously. "They fight with a desperation we have not seen in millennia." "And they are not alone," added another. "More species join them with every passing day. The rebellion is growing." The High Speaker's voice turned icy. "Then we must show them what true power looks like. Initiate the Omega Protocol." Far from the Council's deliberations, humanity continued to press their advantage. Admiral Keller, Alex Reynolds, and countless others knew the war was far from over. But for the first time, they felt a flicker of hope, a belief that victory was not only possible but inevitable. On the edge of the Kasari system, Keller stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve as the fleet regrouped. He stared out at the stars, his expression resolute. "They thought we were weak. They thought they could break us. Instead, they've only made us stronger." The war was far from over, but humanity had turned the tide. And the galaxy would never be the same. A galaxy united. The destruction of the Kasari Spire sent ripples of hope and defiance across the galaxy. Species once resigned to the Galactic Council's tyranny began to see humanity as a beacon of resistance. Messages of support poured in from unexpected corners of the cosmos, and alliances that had seemed impossible just weeks before began to form. In a secluded base on the fringe of Council space, Alex Reynolds sat at a table surrounded by representatives of alien species. The Vexarian Void was there, their translucent form shimmering faintly under the overhead lights. Beside them sat the Lithari, a feline-like species known for their unparalleled strategic minds. Across the table were the Droken, a heavy-set race of miners and engineers whose gruff demeanor belied their fierce loyalty to those they called allies. "This isn't just about humanity anymore," Alex began, his voice firm. "The Council has oppressed every species at this table in some way. They've relied on fear and division to maintain control. But together, we can break their hold on the galaxy." The Lithari representative, a sleek figure with piercing golden eyes, leaned forward. "Your people have shown great courage, Reynolds. But the Council's power runs deep. Even with our combined forces, victory will not come easily." Alex nodded. "I know, but we have something the Council doesn't. Unity born from shared suffering. They underestimated us because we were divided, fighting alone. Now we stand together, and that changes everything." The Droken envoy, a grizzled veteran with a voice like grinding stone, slammed their fist on the table. "We've had enough of their control. My people will fight alongside yours, Reynolds. Just point us at their weak spots." The meeting ended with a pact, a formal alliance against the Council. It was the first time in centuries that so many species had come together with a common purpose. Alex felt a glimmer of hope as he shook hands and exchanged nods with the representatives. Humanity had sparked a fire, and it was spreading. Back aboard the Iron Resolve, Admiral Keller reviewed the new intelligence pouring in from their allies. The Vexari had provided cloaking technology that allowed human ships to move undetected through Council space. The Lithari shared strategic insights that turned humanity's improvised tactics into a coordinated plan. The Droken offered their expertise in building fortifications and weapons that could withstand the Council's might. Keller called a meeting with his commanders to discuss the next phase of the war. "The Council has initiated something they call the Omega Protocol," he began. "We don't have the full picture yet, but it's clear they're preparing for an all-out offensive. We need to strike before they can bring their full power to bear. The holographic map displayed the Denoris cluster, a region critical to the Council's logistical network. This is their Achilles heel, Keller continued. If we take the cluster, we sever their ability to resupply their fleets and maintain control over their territories. But it won't be easy. The Council knows how important this region is, and they'll defend it at all costs. Across the galaxy, preparations for the assault began. Human engineers worked side by side with Procan specialists to reinforce the fleet. Vexeri technicians integrated their cloaking systems into Earth's ships, and Litheri tacticians devised a plan that would maximize their chances of success. On the eve of the attack, Alex stood on the bridge of the Stellar Envoy with Captain Vega. The ship, now outfitted with advanced stealth capabilities, was tasked with leading a covert operation to disable the Council's main sensor array in the cluster. Without it, the Council would be blind to the approaching fleet. "You ready for this?" Vega asked, her tone lighter than usual. Alex gave a small smile. "I don't think I've been ready for anything since this started. But that hasn't stopped us yet." The Stellar Envoy slipped into the Denoris cluster undetected, its cloaking systems rendering it invisible to Council sensors. Alex and a team of commandos boarded a small shuttle, their target a massive orbital station housing the sensor array. As they approached, Alex couldn't help but think of his father, whose courage had inspired everything they were fighting for. The team infiltrated the station with precision, moving through its labyrinthine corridors to reach the control center. Guards were few and far between, a testament to the Council's overconfidence. When they reached the control room, Alex placed a hand on the detonator they had rigged to the station's core. "This is for you, Dad," he whispered, pressing the button. Explosions rippled through the station, and the array went dark. The Stellar Envoy escaped just as the Council's reinforcements arrived, their sensors useless against the cloaked ship. The rest of the fleet, hidden in the shadow of a distant moon, moved in to begin the assault. The battle for the Denoris cluster was fierce. The Council's defenses were formidable, but the combined forces of humanity and their allies proved unstoppable. Procan-built railguns tore through Council warships, while Vexeri-cloaked vessels struck from the shadows. Litheri strategists coordinated the chaos, ensuring every move was part of a larger plan. Admiral Keller watched from the bridge of the Iron Resolve as the final Council stronghold in the cluster fell. The holographic display showed red markers disappearing one by one, replaced by the green of Allied forces. Cheers erupted across the fleet as victory was confirmed. "We did it," Keller said quietly, though his expression remained serious. "But this is just the beginning." The loss of the Denoris cluster sent shockwaves through the Council. Their supply lines were crippled and their fleets were scattered. For the first time, the galaxy saw the Council not as an unshakable power, but as a faltering regime. On Earth, the victory was celebrated with cautious optimism. Broadcasts of the battle inspired more species to join the alliance, and humanity's resolve grew stronger. But Alex and Keller both knew the Council wouldn't go down without a fight. The war was far from over, and the true test of their alliance was yet to come. For now, though, they allowed themselves a moment of pride. Humanity had come together with the galaxy's downtrodden, and they had struck a blow against oppression. The Council had underestimated them, and now they would face the consequences. The final stand. The victory at the Denoris cluster marked a pivotal moment in the war, but it was far from its conclusion. The Galactic Council, though weakened, was far from defeated. Their most loyal forces regrouped at their central stronghold, Auraxis Prime, a fortress world encased in layers of defenses, both planetary and orbital. It was a symbol of the Council's enduring power and their determination to crush the rebellion. In the command center of the Iron Resolve, Admiral Robert Keller and his coalition's leaders gathered around a holographic display of Auraxis Prime. The map was a maze of defensive installations, orbital platforms, and heavily armed fleets. "This is their heart," Keller began. If we take Araxis Prime, the Council's ability to wage war crumbles. But make no mistake, this will be the most difficult battle we've ever faced. The Lithari representative, General Therkesh, studied the map with a calculating gaze. Their defenses are formidable, but not impenetrable. They rely too heavily on automated systems and predictable patrol patterns. If we can exploit those weaknesses, we can break through. The Drokan engineer, Ralvis, grunted in agreement. Their reliance on energy shields makes them vulnerable to our railguns and kinetic strikes. We just need to get close enough to deliver the payloads. Alex Reynolds, now a seasoned diplomat and strategist, stood at the edge of the group. This isn't just about strategy, he said. We need to show the galaxy that the Council's reign is over. This isn't just humanity's fight anymore. It's everyone's. Admiral Keller nodded. And that's why we'll hit them with everything we've got. Every ship, every ally, every ounce of strength. This is all or nothing. The Coalition's plan was ambitious. Vexari-cloaked ships would infiltrate the system first, disabling key sensor arrays and creating blind spots in the Council's defenses. The Lithari would coordinate precision strikes on orbital platforms, while Drokan-built artillery ships would focus on breaching the planet's shields. Humanity's fleet, spearheaded by the Iron Resolve and the Stellar Envoy, would lead the charge against the Council's main fleet. As the Coalition forces assembled, messages of solidarity poured in from across the galaxy. Species once cowed into submission by the Council now sent their ships and soldiers to join the fight. The sight of so many different beings working together was a testament to the power of unity in the face of tyranny. The assault on Araxis Prime began with a daring infiltration. Vexari ships, cloaked and silent, slipped through the Council's perimeter and planted EMP charges on their orbital sensor arrays. When the charges detonated, the Council's sensors went dark, leaving their fleets blind to the approaching Coalition armada. Admiral Keller's voice echoed across the fleet as the ships moved into position. This is it. The fight for freedom, for justice, for everything we've worked for. Stay strong, stay focused, and show them what we're made of. The first wave of attacks targeted the orbital platforms surrounding Araxis Prime. Lithari squadrons executed their maneuvers with surgical precision, disabling weapon arrays and creating openings for the Drokan artillery ships. Massive tungsten rounds, fired at near-light speeds, tore through the platforms, shattering them into debris. The Council's fleet, vast and imposing, moved to intercept. Human ships, equipped with advanced shields and cloaking technology from their allies, engaged in a chaotic, high-stakes dance of fire and evasion. The Stellar Envoy led a squadron of modified civilian ships, their railguns and missile batteries wreaking havoc among the Council's ranks. On the surface of Araxis Prime, chaos erupted as Coalition ground forces landed in waves. Alex Reynolds joined one of the first teams to breach the Council's planetary stronghold. The terrain was harsh, the air filled with the sounds of explosions and the shouts of soldiers. Alex moved with purpose, his father's voice echoing in his mind. Ethan Reynolds had died standing for what was right, and Alex intended to honor that legacy. In the heart of the Council's command center, the High Speaker watched the battle unfold with a mixture of rage and disbelief. The Coalition's strength was unexpected, their tactics relentless. The Council had ruled for millennia through fear and control, but now, their power was slipping through their fingers. They're primitives, the High Speaker hissed to its advisors. How can they be defeating us? They are unified, one advisor replied, its voice tinged with fear. We underestimated their will, their determination. And now, they are breaking us. The Coalition forces pressed their advantage. On the ground, Alex and his team reached the Council's central command tower, planting charges that would cripple their ability to coordinate the battle. In orbit, Admiral Keller's fleet broke through the final defensive line, their kinetic strikes and nuclear salvos overwhelming the remaining Council warships. As the charges detonated, the command tower collapsed in a plume of fire and debris. The Council's forces, leaderless and scattered, began to retreat. The battle for Araxis Prime was over, and the Coalition had emerged victorious. Cheers erupted across the Coalition's fleet as the news spread. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was free from the Council's oppressive rule. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Admiral Keller stood before his crew, his voice filled with quiet pride. "We did it," he said. "We stood together, and we won. This victory isn't just ours. It belongs to every species that fought for freedom. Remember this moment, because we've changed the galaxy forever." Back on Earth, the victory was celebrated with joy and reflection. Alex returned to New Terra Nova, where he visited his father's memorial. Standing beneath the stars, he placed a hand on the plaque bearing Ethan's name. "We did it, Dad," Alex whispered. "We showed them what humanity is capable of. And we're not done yet." The Galactic Council's empire was shattered, but the work of rebuilding the galaxy was just beginning. Humanity and their allies vowed to create a new era, one of cooperation, justice, and hope. For the first time in history, the galaxy belonged not to a few, but to everyone willing to stand together. Humanity's journey had taken them from the brink of destruction to the heights of triumph. And as the stars shone brightly above, it was clear that this was only the beginning.